Hi, I'm Tara from Wild Bird Farm. It is time to get our hydroponic tulips started. It is 23 degrees out in the area where I'm going to be working today, so I thought we'd stay inside for as long as we could to talk about the varieties that I'm starting. We are here in the third week of December, and I am shooting for Valentine tulips this year. So I got all of my bulbs from Leo Burby this year, and they came with a note, and I'll read you a bit of it. They put them in their cooler on 9/3. So when they got to me, they had about 6 weeks of cooling, and the majority of tulips need between 12 and 16 weeks. 16 is usually what I shoot for. A couple of varieties might need 17, 18 even weeks, but usually you're pretty safe if you have 16 weeks of cooling. So I put, and they actually say on here, on average they need 16 weeks of cooling. So I have had my bulbs just as they came. They came in these bags of 100, and then I put them in just like a paper bag that could breathe, but still wasn't gonna get my fridge, my cooler quite as dirty as the mesh bags when kind of some of the skin flakes off. So they've been in there since they arrived. Again, it's the third week in December, and we are shooting for Valentine tulips. So that's what's going on. I have hydroponic crates that I will show you when we get out to the shed. I have 4 of those. They hold anywhere between 60 to 100 bulbs depending on the size. I think last year I got 75 to 80 in them most of the time. So that's what we're gonna be using. Let me grab the fertilizer. You need to add calcium to the water if you're doing hydroponic tulips. And this is a granular that I will put in the water to dissolve. You have to switch your water pretty frequently, so I'm doing that every 3 to 5 days. And this is, let's see, 19% calcium, 15% nitrogen. That's how a lot of the hydroponic fertilizers come in that ratio, I've noticed. So this is the only supplement that I'll be using, and again, I'll be dissolving these granulars in water as I'm keeping that bottom basin filled with water that we'll look at in a bit. So I have the hydroponic trays. I got those also from Leo Burby last year. Now, as I'm looking at my bulbs, you only want to use really healthy bulbs in hydroponics. And I did notice, I've just looked at this first bag. I haven't dug into the other paper bags, but there's some that are gonna be too moldy, and I'm gonna have to throw them out. There's some that look good, but definitely, I'm not sure. It was probably my storage method, having these kind of stacked up in the fridge. But definitely I'll be throwing out any bulbs that don't look really good. But the hydroponic trays, as we'll look at, have little pricks on them, little pointy bits, and these just secure onto them just very close together. Some of them are touching. So that is the plan when we go outside, and I'm going to show you the varieties here in a minute. But just a little bit of background, I tried this last year. I actually tried forcing a couple different ways last year. So I did the hydroponics in our home in an unused room where I blocked the heat vents. It stayed anywhere between 55 and 65 in there. I did have blooms, but I think it was too warm. It was really too warm for them. So this year I'm going to be doing everything out in our shop. Last year I also tried forcing some in soil in crates. I did those out in our garage, and what I did was I bought an inexpensive plastic clear greenhouse off of Amazon. I figured that would help hold in the heat. I have a little space heater that can be regulated to turn on and off depending on the temperature. So I set that cooler in the beginning, and then when the tulips were growing, I left it between 55 and 60. So if the temperatures in that little greenhouse dropped lower than 55, 60-ish, that heater would kick on. That worked pretty well for me. The heat and the temperature worked really well, but I didn't have a lot of airflow in that plastic greenhouse, and it got a little bit probably too humid out there. So I did start running fans, and I was able to harvest tulips that way. That was in soil forced in crates. So this year I decided no soil. That was pretty messy, and I don't really want to do that inside anywhere. If I do tulips in crates again, it will either be just outside or outside in our hoop house where it's a dirt floor. So this year it is strictly hydroponics. And again, I'm doing this in a different building. This is out in our shed that we put up. But I still have that plastic greenhouse over the table where I have my hydroponic trays, thinking that if I do need to add some supplemental heat from that space heater, just heating a small area with the greenhouse. But I definitely want to have it open and have more airflow this year. So let's look at the varieties here. Okay, first up, I have an early double called Mondial, and this is a white. And I'm mostly going for white and red for the Valentine's time. So I will have 100 of these minus, I do see a little bit of mold on some of these in this bag. So we have Mondial. The other white one I have is a single, and it's called White Prince. Just a pure white tulip, really pretty. Both of these, actually everything that I'm going to force this year is recommended for forcing. That's another thing. Not every single tulip that you'll pick up will be great for forcing. So if you don't have your cooling amount of weeks right, if you don't have the temperature right, and then you don't have bulbs that really like to be forced, that's probably not a good combination. So do a little bit of research on this if you're thinking to do this for yourself. There are resources out there that list tulips that are like to be forced in general, and then specifically in water, so hydroponically like we're doing. Another one is Christmas Dream, and this is a pinky red. I think it's gonna be maybe a dark pink. That's a single. I think I have 100 of those. I don't really enjoy using red flowers too much, except for like Christmas and Valentine's Day. So I definitely want to get these red ones going in hopes that they'll be ready for Valentine's Day. This last one is a single that's called Lean Vandermark. I believe I got 200 of these, and they are red with a white tip. So I thought that would be good for Valentine's Day. So these are the 4 varieties that we are going to head out and force. So I think I've kind of covered the basics. Doubles are a little bit slower to bloom than singles, and some of these singles go really quick. So it's gonna be a little bit of trial and error for myself as well as for you if you've decided to try and do hydroponics. Last year I definitely did smaller amounts. So I think I'm gonna be starting as many as I can get into 4 hydroponic trays. But all in, I bought 700 pre-cooled tulips this year. Again, like I said, a few I'm gonna hold back for Easter forcing, more so just because I don't have enough trays to do them all now. And spreading them out just in case something goes wrong with some or all of these, then I kind of have some more that I can play with. Again, this is only my 2nd year doing the hydroponics, so definitely still trial and error for me. So I am going to get bundled up and get all of my supplies packed, and we're gonna head up to the shed and hopefully not get too cold in there while we get these set up. Okay, here is the setup. You can see the plastic greenhouse. Pardon the dog barking. This front flap rolls down and zips. And then, as I've said, I put a space heater in here before. And then here are the hydroponic trays. I brought out a temperature gauge to see how chilly it is in here. And it's gonna keep dropping. I'm sure it's not 50 in here. But to get a close-up on these, pretty sharp little spikes here, and each of the bulbs are gonna go on here. And then there is an overflow area, so you don't want to overfill the bulb. The water just wants to sit right below where the bulb is, but that is kind of an overflow mechanism. And my plan, since I have to switch the water so frequently, is to get maybe a couple 5-gallon buckets put them down on the ground here. So I can just lift this off, dump it, put it back up here, and then refill it using maybe a gallon jug. So I can measure out that fertilizer pretty accurately. But that's the plan. I suppose we get to work and see how many bulbs we can get started today. So they do need, after they have their appropriate amount of cooling time, they need about 3 weeks to get their roots going. And I like to have them in the dark when I do that. So I brought out some paper bags. I used this last year. I just laid paper bags over the top to block out most of the light. So 3 weeks in the dark, sitting in temperatures between 40 and 45 degrees. And then after that, raising the temperature up to about 50 to 55 for them to start putting on top growth. That's the plan. All right. Okay, this is going to be a little bit of an awkward angle. I don't have a lot of supplies here out in our shed. I am going to start with the Christmas Dream. Maybe these will be better pictures if I hold them up real close. I want to use most of these and the other red ones. So I thought I better start there. And looking at these bulbs, most of them look great. I see a couple that are shriveled up. But I'm going to start down here. And I'll do a couple close-ups, but I am just putting them on the spikes as close together as I can get them. Now something like this that looks shriveled up compared to the nice bulb is just going to get thrown away. All right, I'm gonna take you off and show you a close-up, and then I'm gonna speed this up. Okay, got a couple of good bulbs here. Point side goes up, flat side goes down on the spike, putting them very close together and just popping them on the spike to secure. And then since they are on here to stay, as long as you're careful dumping the water out, they should hang right on those spikes just fine. All right. Got a lot to fill here. Let's go. Okay, I have them in. Depending on the variety, I was really impressed with some, and some I had to throw away a lot. So I'm a little disappointed about that. I'm assuming it was my storage method, being in a fridge, in the paper bags stacked up. Maybe there wasn't enough airflow, maybe too humid, I'm not sure. But these are the Christmas Dream on the end, and that's to here. So I threw away maybe 15% of those, which I guess was acceptable to me. The bulbs look really good otherwise. These lean Vandermarks I was disappointed with. I got 200 of those, but I only have this tray full and then this strip over here. So I had a lot of loss on those. The white prints, I don't think I threw one of these away. Huge bulbs, look really, really good in this tray here. And then another one I was pretty disappointed with, these double mondials. So I don't know if some varieties maybe don't store as well as others. I might have to do some research on that. But definitely less of those than what I was expecting. Now I do have another 100 of these that I was gonna save for springtime. I may bring a few more out. I definitely want to look at them and just see what they look like. So this is what we're gonna start with here, and I am going to bring out some gallons of water that have been mixed with the right percentage of that nitrate and calcium fertilizer, and we're gonna pour it in here right up to this lower grid line, I guess. That's gonna sit right below the bulbs. And then let me grab my paper bags. Okay, I just have these paper bags from the grocery store, and I'm going to lay them across, and then I'll probably put a couple boards just to kind of keep these down. And I'll be checking them every couple days. I may need to add water, probably not too much this time of year when it's this chilly out here. But then every 4-ish days, I'll be changing the water out to keep that really fresh and clean. And just to check our temp here, we are at 40 degrees right now. We really need to be between here and 45. So I may partly lower, let's see if I can back out of here, may partly lower this and try and keep more of the heat from that space heater in here. But that's gonna do it for today. I will keep you updated on progress here, and hopefully Valentine's Day tulips. Cross your fingers. All right, until next time, flower friends, stay warm.